Hi everyone, this is Sridhar Chintala, Assistant Professor of Physics, ABV Government Degree College, Janagam. So far I am doing lectures on modern physics, the sixth semester of BSc MPC according to Kakatiya University syllabus. So I am going to take a class on nuclear physics, which is the third unit in the sixth semester, paper uh, 7, modern physics. So this is the paper. This is the topic which I am going to discuss in this lecture. Nuclear physics, general properties of nucleus and liquid drop model. And this nuclear physics, the chapter unit 3 comes under the modern physics paper 7. This is a compulsory paper according to Kakatiya University syllabus, and this is the sixth semester, that is the last semester of BSc Physics. So this is the pictorial diagram which gives the properties of the general properties of the nucleus, about the sizes of the uh, different particles, where the quarks, protons, electrons, nucleus, and atom. So this is the relative size of all the particles, and this is the famous formula for calculating the radius of the nucleus. R is equal to R naught into a power 1 by 3. And this picture depicts the structure of a nucleus or structure of a atom. So where the nucleus is in the center, and around which the electrons are revolving in a circular or more rather in elliptical orbits. So that is the model given by the Bohr, and it is modified by Sommerfeld. So that is the uh, atomic model which was given by Bohr. And then this is in the third year BSc modern physics paper. And as far as the nucleus is concerned, how nucleus is made of, and uh, what are the constituents that are there in the nucleus. So when you consider a nucleus, the nucleus consists of neutrons and protons after the discovery of neutrons. So the nucleus is believed to be composed of protons and neutrons. And a proton has a positive charge equal in magnitude to that on an electron, with its rest mass mp is equals to 1836 me, where me is the rest mass of the electron, and that rest mass of the electron is given by 9.1 into 10 power of minus 31 kg, and the mass of the proton is 1836 times greater than the mass of the electron. And the neutron, which is slightly heavier than proton, so the mass of the neutron is given by 1838.6 times the rest mass of the electrons. So when you consider the mass of the proton and mass of the neutron is slightly heavier than proton, and the neutron is a neutral one having no charge, possesses no charge. And both this proton and neutron have intrinsic angular momentum of half h pi 2 pi, that is h cut by 2, that is an integral, half integral multiple of h cut, that is h by 2 pi, and possesses a small magnetic moments. Protons and neutrons in the nucleus taken together are referred to as nucleons. So in the nucleus there are two types of particles. The particles are protons and neutrons, and protons and neutrons combined together called as the nucleons, the particles which are in the nucleus. And the nucleons in a nucleus are held together by some sort of strong attractive forces called nuclear forces. And these forces are highly complex in nature and have very much different in character from electromagnetic and gravitational force. So this is the gist, or this is the what is called the synapses that we are going to discuss in the present lecture. And as far as the general properties of nucleus is concerned, first we'll discuss the size of the nucleus, that is nuclear size. So when you consider the nuclear size, from the Rutherford's work, the mean radius of the nucleus comes out to be 10 to the power of minus 14 to 10 to the power of minus 16 meters, and the radius of that atom is about 10 to the power of minus 10 meters. Thus, the radius of the nucleus is 10,000 times smaller than the radius of the atom. So, the radius of the nucleus is of the order of minus 10 to the power of minus 14 meters to 10 to the power of minus 16 meters, and 10 to the power of minus 15 meters is referred to as 1 Fermi. So, the empirical formula for the nuclear radius is given as R is equals to R naught into A power 1 by 3. R is equals to R naught into A power 1 by 3. So this is the formula. This is the formula which is used to calculate the radius of the given nucleus, and this is just an empirical formula having no evidence of practical proof. That is, the empirical formula for the nuclear radius is R is equals to R naught into A power 1 by 3, where A is the mass number and R naught is a constant, and this R naught is equals to the radius of the first orbit, that is the hydrogen nucleus radius. And in this one, R naught is equals to 1.3 into 10 to the power of minus 15 meters, where 10 to the power of minus 15 meters is considered to be 1 Fermi. So it is R naught is equals to 1.3 Fermi. 1 Fermi is equals to 10 to the power of minus 15 meters. From this formula, we can estimate the radius of the carbon isotope, that is carbon 612, as R is equal to 1.3 into A power 1 by 3, that A of carbon is 12. So 12 to the power of 1 by 3, and if you simplify, you will get R is equals to 3 Fermis. That is the radius of the carbon isotope, carbon 612. So this is about the nuclear size. The nuclear size is of the order of 1 Fermi, and we can calculate the nuclear size of any radius of any nucleus by substituting the mass number in the given formula, that is R is equals to R naught into A power 1 by 3. So if we know the mass number, we can estimate the radius of the given nucleus. And then the nuclear density. So the nuclear density rho n is given by nuclear mass by nuclear volume. Generally, the general density is given by mass by volume, and here it is the nuclear density. So it is the ratio of nuclear mass to the nuclear volume, where nuclear mass is given by A into Mn, where Mn is the mass of the nucleus, and nuclear volume is given by 4 pi 3 pi r cube, and where A is the mass number and Mn is the mass of the each nucleon, that is 1.67 into 10 to the power of minus 27 kg. So it is of the mass of the proton, and if you consider the mass of the neutron, it is slightly greater than the mass of the proton. So on an average, we are taking the mass of the nucleon as 1.67 into 10 to the power of minus 27. So the nuclear density rho n is equals to nuclear mass divided by nuclear volume. And if R is the radius of the nucleus, then nuclear volume is equals to 4 by 3 pi r cube. So 4 by 3 pi into r cube is equals to r naught into a power 1 by 3 whole cube. So that gives the value of nuclear volume as 4 by 3. So 4 by 3 pi r naught cube into A. So this is the nuclear volume, and the nuclear mass is given by A into Mn. So if you substitute that those values in the definition of nuclear density rho n, you will get rho n is equals to A into Mn divided by 4 by 3 pi r naught cube into A, and gets cancelled. This A gets cancelled. We are left with the formula for the density as Mn divided by 4 by 3 pi r naught cube, where r naught is the radius of the first orbit, first Bohr's orbit, or the radius of the hydrogen nuclei, which is a constant, and 4 and 3 and pi all are constants, and the variable is the the Mn is the mass of the nucleus. This is also a mass of the nucleon. This is also a constant. So this is gives out to be the value of nuclear density as 1.816 into 10 power of minus 17 kg per meter cube. So regardless of the particles, or regardless of the size of the nucleus, or regardless of the number of nucleon present in the nucleus, the nuclear density is a constant one. This is equal to 1.816 into 10 power of 17 kg per meter cube, and this density is constant for any nucleus. So then the nuclear charge. So we already know that the nucleus consisting of two types of particles. One is protons and the other one as the neutrons. So both are combinedly called as the nucleons. As the neutron is the neutral one, the charge of the nucleus is equal to the charge of the protons contained in it, and each proton has a charge of 1.6 into 10 to the power of 19 minus 19 coulombs. So the charge of the nucleus is equal to Z into E, where Z is the atomic number of the nucleus, that gives the number of protons. So the nuclear charge is given by Z into E. Then the nuclear mass and the binding energy. So here, in order to keep the protons, which are like charges, within a small volume, so if we consider the the radius of the nucleus as nucleus is, that is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 15 meters, and if you can calculate the volume, so that gives out to be 10 to the power of minus 15 whole cube. So that is the within such a volume. So if we want to keep the proton intact in that value, we have to have a stronger force, which is to overcome the electrostatic force of repulsion between the protons. So that is the uh, force which is responsible for the nucleus to held together, and that binding energy will come from the nuclear mass. As far as the binding energy is concerned, if there are Z protons and N neutrons in the nucleus, then the assumed mass of the nucleus is equal to Z into Mp plus N into Mn, where Z is the number of protons and N is the number of neutrons. So Z into mass of each proton plus N into mass of each neutron. So that gives the nucleus mass. That is, the mass of the nucleus is given by Zmp plus Nmn, where the neutron number, is given by A minus Z, the mass number minus the atomic number. So that is the difference between the mass number and atomic number, that gives that is equals to the number of neutrons. So the mass of the nucleus is given by Zmp plus Nmn. The assumed mass is Zmp plus A minus Z into Mn, where Mp is the mass of each proton and Mn is the mass of each neutron. But in real cases, in the practical cases, if you consider the mass of the nucleus, the mass of the nucleus is somewhat less than the assumed mass, that is the Zmp plus A minus Z into Mn. due to the mass defect contribution from each nucleon. So in general, the mass of the nucleus is given by the mass of the all the nucleons, that is the mass of the protons and mass of the neutrons. So if a nucleus is consisting of Z number of protons and N number of neutrons, then the total mass of the nucleus is given by Z into Mp plus N into Mn. But in practical, if you observe the mass of the nucleus, it is found to be less than this value. That means some mass is missing, and this missing mass is contributes to the binding energy. So the difference of the masses is given by Zmp plus A minus Z into Mn minus real mass of the nucleus, that is consisting of Z number of protons and A number of neutrons. So Zmp plus A minus Z into Mn minus real mass of, that is M of Za. So this is equal to the mass defect. So the mass defect is defined as the mass missing in the calculation of the nuclear mass, where the nuclear mass is assumed to be the total number of, the total mass of the nucleons, that is the total mass of the neutrons plus protons. But in practical case, if you observe the mass of the nucleus, it is somewhat less. So the difference in masses is given as the delta M, that is defined as the mass defect. So delta M is called the mass defect, and this mass defect is responsible for binding energy of the nucleus based on Einstein's mass energy equivalence. So the mass so missing in the formation of a nucleus will be used in the form of binding energy, and that value of the binding energy is given by Einstein's mass energy equivalence, that is delta E is equals to delta M into C square. The general formula is E is equals to mc square, and here the mass is disappearing. That disappearing mass we are calling it as the mass defect, that is delta M. So delta E is equals to delta M into C square. So that is the disappeared mass, and due to that disappeared mass we are getting some energy, and that energy we are calling it as the binding energy. The binding energy as a function of Z number of protons and A number of neutrons is equal to the delta M into C square, where hence mass of the nuclide is given by, so if you want to calculate the mass of the nucleus or the nuclide, it is given by M of Z comma A is equals to the assumed mass minus the mass defect, and the mass defect is given by, this is the binding energy of Z comma A is equals to delta M into C square. And if you want to calculate for, if you want to write for the delta M, this will be equal to BE of Z comma A by C square. So the mass of the nuclide is given by M of Z comma A is equal to Z MP plus A minus Z Mn minus binding energy of a nucleus consisting of Z number of protons and A number of nucleons, and divided by C square. So this is the mass of the nucleus in terms of binding energy. Then the force. So what is the force that keeps the atoms, the nucleons in the atom or the nucleons in the nucleus together without any repulsion? Since there are protons which are having the positive charges, so they are like charges, there is a chance of repulsion due to the electrostatic force of repulsion. But in spite of the repulsion between the protons, they are coming in a smaller volume, and they are existing in that smaller volume. So that means some sort of force must be responsible for that smaller volume of the nucleus. So that force we are calling it as the so why doesn't the nucleus of an atom fly apart if it's made of positively charged protons? So the strong nuclear forces hold the nucleus of an atom together. So this is the electromagnetic repulsion between the positive charges. So despite of this electromagnetic repulsion or electrostatic repulsion, So these particles are attracting towards each other. So that attractive force, we are calling it the strong attractive force, that is the strong nuclear force. So let us see the nature of nuclear force, that is the nature of nuclear forces. The value of binding energy, if you consider, so from the observations of the binding energy calculated and the binding energy calculated for a nucleon, if you observe, the mass numbers which are having greater than 40, the binding energy is about 8 MeV per nucleon. The value of binding energy per nucleon for atomic mass greater than 40 is approximately constant, and it is about 8 MeV per nucleon, and this is about a million times higher than the binding energy of an electron in the hydrogen atom. The hydrogen atom energy, the energy of the hydrogen atom is given by 13.6 electron volts, whereas the binding energy is given by 8 mega electron volts, that is 8 million electron volts. That means it is a million times higher than the binding energy of the electron in the hydrogen atom due to electrostatic attraction force. The energy which is gained by the electron in the hydrogen atom is due to the electrostatic force of attraction, whereas the binding energy is due to the other force which is other than the electrostatic force. And if you consider the binding energy per nucleon is approximately constant for the nucleides of atomic mass number greater than 40, and it is almost equal to 8 million electron volts per nucleon. Thus, the force that keeps the nucleons together is much stronger than the electrical force which keeps the atom together. So that means the force which is responsible to keep the nucleons together must be very different from this electrostatic force of attraction, and that must be very stronger than this electrostatic force of attraction also. So nuclei contain charged particles, protons. The forces acting between the protons should be forces of repulsion. So in a nucleus, we are having neutrons and protons. As the neutrons are chargeless particles, so we have to consider the protons. So protons, if you consider, there is a electrostatic force of repulsion present between any two protons. To have a stable state of nucleus, other forces act on the protons other than the electrostatic force of repulsion, and these attractive forces should exceed the force of repulsion. And if you consider the magnitude of the different forces, the four fundamental forces in the nature, the four fundamental forces are the gravitational force, electromagnetic force, strong nuclear force, and weaker nuclear force. So as far as the strong nuclear force is concerned, it is about 10 to the power of 41 times stronger than the gravitational force, and it is about 10 to the power of 39 times greater than the electromagnetic force. So among all the forces in nature of the four fundamental forces, the, the nuclear force is very strong, and it is very short range force. Whereas if you consider the gravitational force, the range is infinity here, and the electromagnetic force is also infinity. And whereas the strong nuclear force is concerned, it is of the order of 10 to the power of minus 15 meters. So within this range only, the nuclear force is attractive. So that means the nuclear force is a short range force, and the other force is called the weaker nuclear force. This is also having a range which is equal to 10 to the power of minus 16 meters. This is also very short range force. And if you look into the properties of the nuclear forces, the nuclear forces are short range forces. They operate within the range of 10 to the power of 15 meters, and their magnitude depends on their internuclear distance. In any nucleus, the two nearest nucleons have been found to exist at a distance of 1.9 into 10 to the power of minus 15 meters apart, where the force of attraction between them is appreciably strong. So these nuclear forces are short range forces. They operate within the range of 10 to the power of minus 15. So if the distance between the two nucleons exceeds the distance of 10 to the power of minus 15, it becomes the repulsive force. So that means the range must be very small. Within that range only they act as these attractive forces. If the range increases, they become repulsive. So if you consider any nucleus, the two nearest nucleons have been found to exist at a distance of 1.9 to 10 power of minus 15 meters. So within that distance, the force of attraction is between them is appreciably strong. And these forces, the force decreases rapidly, more rapidly than 1 by r square, that is the inverse square law. With the increase in internucleon distance, still it becomes negligible when the nucleons are further apart than 10 to the power of minus 14 meters. So as the distance between the particles increases, the strength of the force decreases rapidly, more rapidly than 1 by r square, that is the inverse square law, and the value of that force becomes negligible if the two nucleons are apart uh, 10 to the power of minus 14 meters apart. So if the distance is increases, the magnitude of the force becomes negligible, and if it is equals to 10 to the power of minus 14 meters. So this is the explanation for the nuclear forces or short range forces. The second one is nuclear forces are saturated forces. What do you mean by saturation? Saturation means so if you consider in the nucleus, there are so many number of nucleons that are the protons and neutrons. So regardless of the protons and neutrons, the number of nucleons, the force exists in between any two nucleons. So that means one nucleon interact with the other nucleon with its neighbor, which is in the neighborhood of that nucleon, and it won't interact with the all the nucleons. That means only one nucleon interacts with only another nucleon, so it won't interact with the rest of the nucleons in the nucleus. That means so one to one reaction exists. So that means the forces are saturated forces. It means that each nucleon attracts only those nucleons which are immediate neighbors. It does not impact with all other nucleons. So if every nucleon in the nucleus is supposed to exert the same attractive force on all other nucleons present in the nucleus, then the binding energy of the nucleus should be approximately proportional to the number of interacting nucleons. Since each of the A nucleons in the nucleus would be interacting with A minus 1 other nucleons, the number of interacting nucleons would be m into A minus 1 by 2. So there are A nucleons, and these A nucleons, on an average, each nucleon interact with A minus 1 nucleons. So the number of interacting nucleons would be A into A minus 1 divided by 2. And the binding energy would have increased as rapidly as A into A minus 1 by 2. In heavy nuclei, A may be neglected in comparison with A square, and hence the binding energy in the case of heavy nuclei would be proportional to A square. But this is in sharp contrast with the experimental results in which the binding energy has been found to be nearly proportional to A in respect of heavy nuclei. So this confirms that the nuclear forces are saturated forces. Each nucleon will attract with only the immediate neighbors. So it won't interact with all other nucleons in the nucleus. So this is how the nuclear forces are saturated. And the third one is that the force between the two nucleons seems to be independent of the charge of the nucleus. So as we already know that the nucleus consisting of protons and neutrons, where protons are positively charged and neutrons are neutral ones, so chargeless particles. So though they are chargeless, the same kind of force exists between the all the nucleons. So the force exists between proton and proton, the force exists between proton and neutron, the force exists between neutron and neutron. So the force between the two nucleons seems to be independent of the charge. So that is the reason the same kind of force exists between all the nucleons. So proton neutron, neutron neutron, and proton proton. So it is same for all the three types of nucleon pairs: neutron neutron, proton proton, and neutron proton. One obvious difference exists in the case of two protons where there is an additional electrostatic repulsion but at a distance more than the short range force. So if we when we consider three cases, the three pairs, namely neutron-neutron pair and proton-proton pair and neutron-proton pair, of all the three pairs, the proton-proton pair having some difference. The difference is there is some electrostatic force of repulsion between the proton and proton, and this will overcome when the proton and proton they exist with a distance of 10 to the power of minus 15 meters. That is the short range force, the short range nature of the nuclear force. So this is the force between the two nucleons is charge independent. And the fourth one is the nuclear forces are spin dependent. So what do you mean by spin? Spin is when an electron is revolving around the nucleus, it revolves on its own axis also. That is called the spin of the electron. So likewise, the proton and the neutron are also having spins, and this nuclear force is spin dependent. Depending upon the spin of the particle, this nuclear force changes. So the force existing between two nucleons having parallel spins has been found to be stronger than that existing between the two nucleons having anti-parallel spins. So this is the upward spin and this is the downward spin. So if the both spins are like this is called the parallel mechanism. And if the both spins are downwards, this is also parallel. So if the both spins are parallel, the force between the nucleons is found to be stronger than the anti-parallel spins. So this is how the nuclear forces are spin dependent. So if you consider as an example the diatron problem, the diatron in which the constituent proton and neutron have parallel spins is stable, whereas the diproton or the dineutron in which the nucleons have anti-parallel spins do not exist. So this is how the nuclear forces are spin dependent. So these are the properties of nuclear forces. Then the neutron proton ratio, that is the NZ graph. So the neutron proton ratio, N by Z ratio, that is the nuclear ratio of an atomic nucleus is the ratio of its number of neutrons to its number of protons. Among stable nuclei and naturally occurring nuclei, this ratio generally increases with increasing atomic number. This is because of electrical repulsive forces between protons when separation among protons are more than the nuclear force range. So the neutron proton curve, the NZ curve, is a plot of the number of neutrons against the number of protons. So this is the neutron proton graph, NZ graph. So this is the different regions. These are the different regions, and this is how the graph is looking. So in this graph, there are lines. The stability line is a gentle curve starting from the origin and of increasing gradient. So the line of n is equal to z is a straight line of gradient slope is equal to 1 through the region. So in this figure, we are having two types of lines. So this is called the stability line where n is equals to z. But in general case, this is not the case. This will show some deviation from the n is equals to z graph. So in this graph, there are three regions. One is beta minus particle emitters, and the second one is beta plus particle emitters, and the alpha particle emitters. In the figure, we are shown only the beta minus emitters and beta plus emitters. So the nucleus, nuclei which are having the neutron to proton ratio greater than 1 are beta minus emitters, that is the electron emitters. And where the neutron proton ratio is less than 1, they are beta plus emitters, that is the positron emitters. So this is the neutron proton graph, the NZ graph. So the findings of the NZ graph are, for proton numbers up to 20, NZ is a straight line, n is equals to Z. For all nuclei with greater than Z, Z greater than 20, stable nuclei have more neutrons than protons. The line curve upwards. Unstable nuclei above the stability curve are called neutron rich. Unstable nuclei below the stability curve are called neutron poor. So for light isotopes, the stable nuclei have equal number of protons and neutrons. Up to Z is equals to 20, the proton number is almost equals to the neutron number. For heavier nuclei to be stable, they need to have more number of neutrons than protons. Nuclei which are unstable lie either side of the stability line. The nuclei with too many protons are to the right of the stability line and become more stable by emitting beta plus particles when proton converts into a neutron. And neutron with few protons are to the left of the stability line and become more stable by emitting beta minus particles when a neutron converts into proton. So beta emission, that is positive beta emission and negative beta emission. Negative beta is electron and positive beta is positron. So the positive beta particle is emitted when proton converts into a neutron, and the negative beta particle emits when neutron converts into a proton. So this is how the neutron to proton ratio plays a major role in the nuclear stability. And the observations from the neutron to proton ratio, for each element with atomic number Z small enough to occupy only the first 3 nuclear shells, that is up to that of calcium, that is Z is equals to 20, there exists a stable isotope with N by Z ratio is equals to 1, with the exemption of beryllium, which is having neutron to proton ratio as 1.25, and every element with odd atomic number between 9 and 19 inclusive of hydrogen, that is N is equals to Z plus 1. So neutron by Z proton ratio, N by Z ratio is equals to 0, and helium N by Z ratio is 0.5, are the only stable isotopes with neutron proton ratio under 1. And uranium 238, plutonium 244 have the highest neutron proton ratio of any primordial nuclide at 1.587 and 1.596 respectively, while lead 208 has the highest neutron to proton ratio of any known stable isotope at 1.537. The radioactive decay generally proceeds so as to change the neutron-proton ratio to increase stability. If the neutron to proton ratio is greater than 1, alpha decay increases the neutron-proton ratio and hence provides the common pathway towards the stability for decays involving larger nuclei with too few neutrons. So positron emission and electron capture also increase the ratio, while beta decay will decrease the ratio. So nuclear waste exists mainly because nuclear fuel has a higher stable neutron to proton ratio than the parts into which it is fissioned. So this is about the neutron to proton ratio or neutron proton graph, the NZ graph. Then we are moving on to the model for the nucleus, that is the liquid drop model, and this liquid drop model is proposed by George Gamow. This is according to the formula which is given by the radius of the nucleus, that is R is equals to R naught into A power 1 by 3, which reveals that all nuclei consisting of incompressible matter The nuclear forces are saturated and identical for every nucleon. The density and the binding energy per nucleon are approximately the same for all nuclei and independent of the nucleons within the nucleus. So these are the observations made by GAMO to propose the liquid drop model. So the observations are, one is the radius of the nucleus and the nature of the nuclear force and the properties of the nuclear force, and this led to compare the nucleus with a liquid drop. So in a liquid drop, nucleus has a constant density which is independent of the number of molecules within the drop and incompressible in nature. So when you consider the liquid drop with the nucleus is consisting of incompressible matter where the density is a constant one, independent of the number of nucleons present in the nucleus. Similarly, the density of the liquid drop is also constant, independent of the number of molecules within the drop, and that liquid drop is also incompressible in nature. So this is one similarity. And the second similarity is the energy required to remove molecules from a liquid is the heat of vaporization. So when you consider a liquid drop model, the energy required to remove one molecule is uh, called the heat of vaporization, and this is proportional to the mass number of the molecules in the liquid, just as the binding energy proportional to the number of nucleons in the nucleus. So this is the second similarity between the nucleus and a liquid drop model, and this led to propose a liquid drop model for the nucleus. The idea that molecules in the drop of liquid corresponds to the nucleons in the nucleus is confirmed due to following similarities. So the following similarities will strengthen the liquid drop model are: the nuclear forces in nucleus are analogous to the surface tension force on a liquid drop. The nuclear force is similar to the surface tension in the case of liquid drop. And the second one is nucleons behave in a manner similar to that of molecules in a liquid. And the third one is the fact that the density of the nuclear matter is almost independent of capital A shows the resemblance to a liquid drop where the density of liquid drop is independent of the size of the drop, which is already discussed. The constant binding energy per nucleon is analogous to the latent heat of vaporization, and the disintegration of nuclei by the emission of particles is analogous to evaporation of molecules from the surface of the liquid. And the energy of the nuclei corresponds to internal thermal vibrations of the molecules in the liquid drop. So these are the similarities in between a liquid drop and a nucleus to propose a liquid drop model for a nucleus. The formation of compound nucleus and absorption of bombarding particles corresponds to condensation of liquid drop. And as a model is proposed, that model will have merits as well as demerits. So if you consider the merits and demerits of the liquid drop model, if you look into the merits, the calculation of atomic masses and binding energies can be done with liquid drop model with a good accuracy. And liquid drop model accounts for many of the salient features of the nuclear matter, such as the observed binding energy of nuclei and their stability against alpha and beta disintegration as well as nuclear fission. So these are the merits of the liquid drop model. And if you look into the demerits of the liquid drop model, according to liquid drop model, the nucleus is assumed to be the cluster of nucleons, which is more unrealistic. And it fails to explain the magic numbers and corresponding high stability. So we will discuss in detail about the magic numbers in the next topic, that is the shell model. So the liquid drop model fails to explain the magic numbers and the corresponding high stability of the nucleons. Why such a nucleons with some certain number of protons and neutrons are having higher stability. Other nuclei are not having such a stability, which is not explained by the liquid drop model. So these are the merits and demerits of the liquid drop model, and it fails to explain the measured spins and magnetic moments of the nuclei. Then So far we discussed about what is the nucleus is consisting of, what are the properties of nucleus, general properties of nucleus, and what are the properties of nuclear forces and neutron to proton graph, and then liquid rock model. So let us discuss some solved examples of this topic. So find the energy needed to remove a neutron from the nucleus of the calcium isotope 20 calcium 42, given that the mass of calcium 42 is 41.958622 AMU and mass of calcium 41 is 40.966962278. So there are two isotopes of calcium. One is calcium 2042 and the other one is calcium 2041. So if you want to remove a neutron from the calcium 42, the difference in mass will appear as the energy, and that energy is responsible for the uh, removal of electron. So that is removing a neutron from calcium 42 leaves calcium 41. That is calcium 42 is equals to calcium 41 plus 1 neutron, and mass defect, if you consider, delta M is equals to mass of calcium 41 plus neutron minus mass of calcium 42, and the delta M is equals to 40.962278 plus 1.008665 minus 41.958622. So the delta M comes out to be 0.012321 AMU, and the binding energy is delta M into C square, and 1 C square is equals to 1 C square into AMU is equals to 931 MeV. So this is the binding energy is equals to 0.01 into 2321 into 931, that is 11.48 million electron volts. So this much of energy is needed to remove a neutron from the calcium 42 nucleus. Then this similar example, find the energy released if two hydrogen nuclei can fuse together to form helium nucleus. The binding energy per nucleon of hydrogen and helium is given by 1.1 MeV and 7 MeV respectively. So one hydrogen plus one hydrogen gives to be 1H2 plus 1H2 is equals to 2He4. So 2He4, the binding energy is 4 into 7 is equals to 28 MeV, and binding energy for hydrogen is 2 into 1.1, that is 2.2, and delta E is equals to delta E of helium minus delta E of hydrogen. So 28 million electron volts minus 2 into 2.2 million electron volts, 28 minus 4.4, so 23 million electron volts. So this is the energy released when two hydrogen nuclei fuse to form helium nucleus. So this is how this is already we discussed in the case of nuclear fission. The nuclear fission, and this is the problem based on the radius. R is equal to R naught into A power 1 by 3. So a nucleus of mass 125 has a radius of 6 Fermi. Find the radius of a nucleus having mass number 64. So R is equal to R naught into A power 1 by 3. R1 is equal to A1. So that means R is directly proportional to A power 1 by 3. So if you consider R cube, it is proportional to A. So R1 by R2 is equal to A1 by A2 to the power of 1 by 3. So it is given as A1 is equal to 125, A2 is equal to 64, and R1 is equal to 6 Fermi. R2 is equal to, we have to calculate that. So R1 by R2 is equal to 125 by 64 to the power of 1 by 3, where R1 is given as 6 Fermi, 6 into 10 to the power of minus 15 by R2, and the cube root of 125 by 64 is 5 by 4. So R2 is equal to 6 into 4 divided by 5, 24 by 5, that is 4.8. So 4.8 Fermi. So the question is, if 125, the a nucleus of mass number 125 is having a radius of 6 Fermi, then a nucleus of 64 mass number will have a radius which is less than 6 Fermi, that is given by 4.8 Fermi. and then calculate the radius of helium given that the radius of hafnium is 7.75. This is a similar problem which was already calculated earlier. So, so these are the solved examples, and this is about the nuclear properties and nuclear physics, the general properties of nucleus and liquid rock model, and some solved examples. So thank you for patient listening. Thank you very much.